The first time they told me I didn't belong here, I laughed it off. But when I saw the word "Get Out" sprayed across my front door in red paint, my hands shook. I had worked my whole life for this home, this land, and now they wanted to take it from me. They smiled in my face and stabbed me in the back, all because of the color of my skin. I didn't know then that their hatred would push me to do something I never imagined. And when I did, everything changed. My name is Marcus, and for as long as I can remember, I've believed in working hard and minding my own business. I grew up in a small town where people smiled to your face but whispered when you walked away. I learned early to ignore it, to keep my head down and focus on what mattered, my family. When I finally saved enough to buy this land, I thought I had made it. 5 acres of open space, a small farmhouse I renovated with my own 2 hands, and the dream of raising my kids somewhere safe. Every morning, my wife and I sat on the porch, sipping coffee while the sun rose over the fields. We weren't rich, but we were happy. Then the neighborhood changed. What used to be empty fields turned into construction zones. A housing development popped up almost overnight. Fancy homes, shiny cars, and a homeowners association I never signed up for. At first I thought it was progress. More families, more life. But the first meeting told me everything I needed to know. They didn't see me as a neighbor. They saw me as a problem. The looks started before the words did. Quick glances when I walked into the room. Tight smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Then came the suggestions. Maybe I could paint my fence a different color. Maybe I could keep my tools inside so they didn't ruin the view. And then came the question that told me everything. Do you even own this land? I laughed at first, thinking it was a joke, but the way they stared back, cold, serious, made my stomach twist. That was the moment I realized this wasn't about fences or tools. It was about me. And soon, I was about to learn just how far. They would go to make sure I didn't belong here. It started small. At least, that's what I told myself. A letter in my mailbox one morning with a bold heading, "Violation Notice." Apparently, my truck was an eyesore and didn't meet the community aesthetic. I stared at the paper, confused, because my land wasn't part of their HOA. Or so I thought. When I called the number on the letter, the woman on the other end spoke like she was doing me a favor by answering. "Sir, the entire development falls under the HOA guidelines now," she said. "That includes your property." "That's impossible," I replied. "This land has been in my name for 15 years. You don't own it." A long pause, then a cold laugh. "Sir, you should check the updated map." That was the first crack in my world. A week later, I woke up to the sound of engines, heavy machinery. I stepped outside and nearly dropped my coffee. Bulldozers, 3 of them, on the edge of my land, tearing down my fence like it was scrap wood. I ran toward them, shouting, waving my arms. "Stop! This is private property!" But the workers just looked at me, shrugged, and said, "Talk to the HOA." By the time I got to the site office, the houses were already going up. 35 luxury homes on my land. I demanded answers. They told me I'd missed the meeting where the vote was taken. A vote I was never invited to. They shoved papers at me, full of legal jargon I barely understood. And then came the sentence that made my blood boil. "Maybe this community isn't the right fit for someone like you." Someone like me. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about some map. This wasn't about paperwork. This was about race. They didn't want a black man owning prime real estate in their shiny new neighborhood. They thought they could erase me. The harassment didn't stop there. They started sending strangers to inspect my property, taking pictures of my house while my wife was home alone. One night, we woke up to find our tires slashed. Another night, someone left a dead raccoon on our porch with a note that said, "Sell now or else." I went to the police. You know what they told me. It's probably just kids messing around. Try to keep things peaceful. Peaceful. While they stole everything I worked for, I hired a lawyer. But every time we made progress, another document would show up, another delay, another bill. They had money, they had power, and they had one goal: to make me give up. But they didn't know me, because the land they were so desperate to take, it came with something they didn't even notice. Dam, an old forgotten dam that held back an entire lake. And when they crossed the line for the last time, I knew exactly what I was going to do. Pause. You won't believe what happened next. I'll never forget the day it happened. The day they made their biggest mistake. It was a Saturday morning, bright and clear, when the HOA president, Mr. Collins, showed up on my porch. He didn't knock. He just stood there, smug, holding a clipboard like it was a weapon. "Marcus," he said in that fake friendly tone, "we've been patient. You've had your fun, but it's time to move on. We're offering you double market value. Take it." I stared at him, silent. He mistook my silence for weakness. "You can't fight us. You don't belong here. Take the deal, or the next step will be unpleasant." That was the moment something broke inside me. For months I had watched them steal, humiliate, and threaten me. I had begged for help, played by their rules, and they laughed in my face. Not anymore. I leaned in close and whispered, "You just made your last threat." He chuckled and walked away, thinking he'd won. But he had no idea what I had planned. That night, I stood at the edge of the old dam. The air was cold, heavy with silence, broken only by the distant sounds of their brand new lives. Music, laughter, the clinking of wine glasses. They were celebrating on land that wasn't theirs. My hand trembled as I wrapped the wrench around the first valve. This wasn't an easy choice. I thought about my wife, my kids, everything we'd lost. I thought about every time they looked at me like I was dirt, every time they said, "You don't belong here." And then I turned the wrench. The first surge of water sounded like a roar from the earth itself. It spilled over the edge, racing down toward the valley where those million-dollar homes stood proud and perfect. The lights in their windows glowed like tiny stars, oblivious to the darkness rushing their way. I ran back to my truck and drove to the ridge, high above the neighborhood. From there I could see everything. The water swept through like a beast unleashed, tearing down fences, swallowing pristine lawns, smashing glass like it was nothing. Cars floated like toys. People ran, screaming, their voices carried by the night wind. And me? I just stood there, watching everything they stole get washed away in a single breath. But then, I saw something I didn't expect. A child, clinging to a roof, crying. My heart stopped. This wasn't part of the plan. I never wanted to hurt anyone. I only wanted to take back what was mine. I grabbed my phone and called 911. My voice shook as I told them what happened. By the time the sirens came, the neighborhood was gone, and so was I. But that wasn't the end. Because the next morning, my name was everywhere, and the world had something to say about what I did. The morning after the flood, the world changed. Or at least, my world did. I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing nonstop. Missed calls, messages, news alerts. My name was everywhere. Man destroys luxury homes in HOA dispute. My face splashed across every screen. My story twisted into headlines that made me look like a monster. Some called me a criminal. Others called me a hero. But no one knew the truth. Why I did it. By noon, there were reporters lined up outside the county jail, shoving cameras in my face as officers led me inside. The questions flew like arrows. Did you mean to kill those people? Was this an act of revenge? Do you hate the HOA?
I stayed silent. Because what could I say? that I was tired of being treated like I didn't belong, that no one cared when they stole from me, threatened me, humiliated me, that this wasn't about houses. It was about dignity. In the courtroom, the HOA lawyers came for me like vultures. They called me reckless, unstable, dangerous. They painted me as an angry black man who couldn't control himself. And the worst part? I could see some of the jurors nodding along, eating it up. But then something happened I never expected. People started speaking up. Not just strangers, neighbors. Some of them admitted on the stand that they heard the comments, the slurs. They saw how the HOA treated me and said nothing. Now they couldn't stay silent anymore. And then came the video. One of the construction workers had filmed the HOA president bragging about how they'd finally run that guy out. He laughed, called me a stain on the neighborhood, said, "We're going to take that land whether he likes it or not." When the jury heard that, the room went quiet. In the end, the judge didn't let me walk free. I still faced charges for property damage and reckless endangerment. But the big developers, the HOA board, they faced lawsuits too, millions in damages, fraud charges, even a few arrests. And me? I served my time. 2 years behind bars, 2 years to think about everything that happened. When I got out, the land was gone. The homes were gone too, rebuilt somewhere else. But the earth where it all happened, it was empty, quiet, like it was waiting to forget. I rebuilt my life piece by piece, started working as a contractor again. My kids grew older, wiser. And me? I never stopped thinking about how fast things can be taken from you when people decide you don't belong. Sometimes I drive past that empty stretch of land, grass growing over what used to be their dream and my nightmare, and I wonder, was it worth it? Then I remember the faces in that courtroom, the people who finally saw the truth for what it was, and I think, maybe it was because this story isn't just mine. It's a reminder that when racism hides behind rules, titles, and papers, it's still racism. And if no one stands up to it, it wins. So I'll leave you with this. What would you do if someone tried to erase you because of the color of your skin? Would you fight back or walk away?